The idea was to establish robust principles and values and also practical arrangements to facilitate a broad and wide understanding of what India is, to build a bulwark against sectarian, communal, caste-ridden, and chauvinistic ideas of culture. That was the original idea. So, an annual event, a conference, bringing in people with different views on a common platform, very much like the sessions that are being organized here, a plenary session, then expert sessions, parallel sessions probably, theme-based. So that was the idea. And then the other important part of that was you bring in how to link culture and science and technology. In fact, there's a very famous lecture by the British scientist and journalist and writer C.P. Snow, as long back in 1959, where he proposed the idea that the intellectual life in the Western world was split into two camps, the sciences and the humanities. People in the humanities looked down on scientists because they were not considered literate, they didn't know Shakespeare, they didn't know Keats Shelley. But he asked the reverse question, how many of the non-scientists know anything about the basic laws of science, and so on. So these were split, there was no common link, no bridge between the two, and it led to a major debate. It was a very valuable insight. And in India also, I think you have this divide, maybe not to the same extent, but the idea was to work on this to build a bridge and an interaction, a conversation, if you like, between those who were very much into cultural studies and cultural practice, including practitioners, with those who are more technologically oriented, like your own, what the technology you use for your for documentation, for video production, and so on. Now, in your own field, you'll have to do both. The content is often cultural, and the technology is so. Again, you find a lot of people unable to handle tech, and the tech people do not perhaps read enough to widen their knowledge or deepen their knowledge. So the idea was to bring it in, but very important was we saw disturbing signs all around. Communal poison, hate politics, particularly using the social media, Facebook, WhatsApp, the messaging apps and so on to really distort and poison the atmosphere. There are also good things that come out of it, good sharing, solidarity. In an emergency, these things prove very useful, but fake news, hate politics, complete lies, all this comes in. So how do you build this bridge was one of the ideas, and Kerala, and which state more than Kerala? Kerala, in my view, is clearly socially the most advanced state in India. You see it every indicator, including social indicators, life expectancy at birth, low infant mortality, low maternal mortality, almost, total literacy, including female literacy. So all these things come in, and so this was the idea. By then we were overtaken by the calamity, and then in our organizing committee, my role was quite limited, though I am chairman, but we had a good discussion. Is it appropriate to hold it at this time? How soon can you hold it after the calamity? Would people feel hurt? And so on. All these questions were discussed, and I think the correct answer to that was, yes, this is already, a budget was provided, this is already, the arrangements are there, a lot of thinking has gone into it, and some effort also. So deploy it to, turn it to the idea of what can you do to rebuild Kerala along new lines. Of course, not entirely new lines, because there are a lot of good things in the present arrangement, but how to, as the Chief Minister has said, not just to rebuild along the old line, what was lost, but use this as an opportunity, a challenge to think anew and build better, whether you're talking about patterns of living, livelihood, people's habits, handling of the environment, issues of climate change. So we could learn from this and perhaps prevent or mitigate. You can't prevent natural disasters. That's beyond our control. But you can mitigate the effect, and you can also build resilience. I think, which is the title of this whole thing, build a resilient Kerala. Because as every expert has said, Kerala is one of the more vulnerable states in the country uh, to natural disasters. And you can also think of Andaman and Nicobar also. Uh, and so how do you build resilience? The resilience meaning the ability to cope with uh, these challenges, these extreme events. Now, global warming and climate change have clearly, scientists have shown, they've increased both the frequency and the intensity of what are called extreme events, like the flood, the downpour that caused flood, as well as landslides in a devastating way. So I think so that came together. We wanted to get people like Professor Amartya Sen, our Nobel laureate economist. He was very willing, but he couldn't come because he had some health issues. But we were fortunate to get the former vice president to come and start it off, to set the ball rolling, to inaugurate it. And I hope that the plenary sessions where papers on the general approach to the subject, broad, how do you get into this, as well as this more expert or specialized discussions will go along well. People will that there'll be valuable contributions, good insights, some good discussion. The problem with the conference is there's not enough time for discussion because too many things are packed in because people want to speak, and some speakers overshoot the time allotted. So all this has to be managed. But at the end of the day, I think end of the 4 days, in fact, I think we look forward to a valuable outcome. Outcome is not one single document and so on. Many ideas which can be picked up, worked upon here or later on, or even in the next conference and so on. But the idea is to this is on resilient Kerala, but the ambition is to go even beyond that and look at everything. And Kerala being a magnet for bringing together fertile ideas, new thinking, combined with what is good in the past, in existing society. So these are, I think, the whole objective, and I really admire the people here because they worked under many constraints of time. Where the people could come in this time, because this is a season when many international conferences take place. In Chennai, we have the big music season. So a lot of people come, and elsewhere also. So I think, and people go away for Christmas and the New Year. So I think it's quite a challenge to bring it together, but it's a very good idea. And I was pleased to hear some of the delegates coming from outside say that what a good idea. No other state has done it this. So early days, we shouldn't be complacent. There's a lot of scope for improvement. But I was very pleased with the response, and I was honored that I had a little role in this. And we had a fine opening, I think. The Chief Minister did not make just a formal speech. I couldn't follow the whole thing because it's Malayalam, and I look forward to reading it in English when the full translation is available. But he clearly had given a lot of thought into it, and he went into detail on what it means to build a resilient Kerala post disaster, post calamity. So I think so people took it very seriously, and with Chief Minister Pinarayi Vijayan, who really was very resolute in leading the response to this calamity. I think resolute as well as, I said, unflinching, because you have to maintain your cool, and you go and see everything out. And also the magnificent response from not only the government. Earlier, the army, the central government also helped local government and the state government, but led by you had to find a leader for this, and the Chief Minister certainly more than rose to the challenge, and the way he managed it, and also the response that came first on the ground I'm told particularly by fisher folk and young people, youth, who performed heroically in the immediate rescue and relief efforts. I went to Kollam uh, uh, soon after the calamity with M.A. Baby for a lecture. And although that part was not really affected badly, I could see the voluntary work, the relief efforts, and all the goods that had been assembled. Uh, and it became sort of yoga for people to go and volunteer their efforts in a neighboring area or somewhere else. Everybody wanted to go. And the question was to have an organized and disciplined effort. And I think I don't think any state could have matched Kerala in the way it responded to this. And now, of course, we have moved on, and we are in a stage of, I suppose there is some relief, but it's mainly rehabilitation. And reconstruction will come, for which enormous resources are required. I expected more from the central government, but anyway, we welcome whatever has come. Some contributions from abroad, from people, Keralites abroad, and other people also from Tamil Nadu, from elsewhere, I think have been very, very encouraging. So I think it's a great idea to use what had already been planned to address, to deliberate on, to have consultations, broad-based consultations on all issues and challenges of interest to us that matter to society, that matter to us, whether it's cultural or technological or scientific or related to some social and political issues. All that will be taken on, but this is now focused on building a resilient Kerala. Because when the Supreme Court came out with the verdict, this was not the making of the Kerala government and anyone. They came out with a decision which I think is very correct, very just, and a lot of people welcomed it because it's a backward and obscurantist. It's shocking. It's unconstitutional to prevent women of that age group or any age group from going to place of worship. This is a principle laid down in the Constitution, the equality principle, no discrimination. Anyway, there may be some practical constraints here or there where you observe the practices, but to bar women on a reactionary premise that those within that age group, 10 to 50, should not be allowed is clearly wrong. It lasted too long, and it's the time that the Supreme Court came out with a unanimous judgment. No, one dissent by the lady judge, but other than that, a strong and very powerful judgment. Now, the question was implementing it. Now, these forces, particularly the Hindu right, and I am sorry to say, the most opportunistically and disgracefully, the Congress party in this state played the B team to this, because the BJP doesn't have much here. The Congress is the main opposition, along with its allies, and it fished in what it saw as troubled waters. And it's very curious that the Congress president says that I'm personally for what the Supreme Court ruled, that women should not be barred, but he let it be. What kind of politics or leadership is this? It's disgraceful, I would say. If you have a policy, you have to implement it. Each state can't this is not some minor difference. This is yes or no issue. So the president says, I'm for yes, but I leave it to them to sabotage the implementation of the verdict of the Supreme Court. As for the BJP and all the other forces that have gathered around them, atrocious. I hope that the Supreme Court will pull up some of their leaders for contempt, because this is a blatant violation. And they are not open. Instead of saying that we are totally opposed to the Supreme Court verdict, they are targeting those who are duty bound to implement it and creating trouble. They attacked women journalists physically also. That is sexual harassment. Why haven't those fellows been pulled up by the Supreme Court? So the court also bears responsibility for ensuring that its orders are implemented. And it is true that it has caused some division in Kerala. But again, I admire the resoluteness of the state government, particularly the chief minister, who was not given an inch on this, because I heard that speech and it had subtitles, which is on YouTube, where Chief Minister Vijayan uh, goes into great detail without raising his voice. I think people who have seen it were astonished, without the shouting matches you see on television or the demagoguery which some of the BJP and other leaders practice. Very coolly, in a low voice, if you like, he explains patiently that any social reform will meet resistance, and he gave a number of examples. Uh, and what happened in Maharashtra, the Shani temple, and so on, and what happened in the history of Kerala itself, when any reform movement, whether it's Narayana Guru, Ayyankili, or anyone, uh, taking society forward, they are bound to meet resistance. So, in a sense, this is historically not surprising that they are doing it, but here it is a deliberate ploy. I don't think they have any great religious faith. Some people have been duped. They are using it purely for political ends. The PCC chief here and various others, as well as the BJP leaders. Pon Radhakrishnan, he comes and tries to make trouble. But so far, I think people in Kerala have rallied. I was there when there was a festival, respect the values of the constitution. I happened to be here, and we saw people come together. But it has caused some damage. But you have to face it. You can't run away from it. So I think they've handled it well. The police also, I think, have conducted themselves very well. They've observed the law, but they have not overreacted, although there are attempts to provoke them and to also demonize the police. But I think they've acted largely with great sobriety and responsibility, and intelligently also, because we don't want anything to flare up either. So it is unfortunate. They were waiting for an opportunity. The first one, nature struck Kerala, a calamity. The second time, uh, the Supreme Court verdict came. It was a very good thing, but they used it, they exploited it to try to create trouble. But I don't think they are going to succeed if they think that their electoral base will suddenly increase. I think these emotions will rise and fall, and they'll keep it alive. Just like the Ram Temple issue, that's a much bigger issue. When elections come, they revive the rhetoric, construct it, get a verdict, put pressure on the courts, and similarly they'll do it. But in Kerala, I think as in Tamil Nadu, they don't have any base, these forces. And also the minorities here are very strong and politically well organized. Whether it's together, I think it's more than 40%. It's about 40% of the population between Muslims and Christians in Kerala. So it's not an easy, Kerala is not a pushover. But still they will try to polarize, particularly the Hindu section of the people. And I hope that's why you need this Indian Cultural Congress. The idea, you may not call it that, but the idea that you are a bulwark of secular, that respects pluralism. The idea of India, to quote Sunil Kilnani, that we are very diverse, we are pluralistic, and by and large, over history, people have lived together, and you had great rulers, whether it's Ashoka or Akbar, and others as well, and there are many others, who tried to unite. Narayana Guru himself, and the communist, the movement in Kerala, I think it's united people. It's brought them together. So it's a difficult challenge, but I think they handled it very, very competently.